Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Wolf. I'm happy. Thank you, first of all, for all of you being here. I'm happy to be joined by so many great legislators behind me. And I'm going to introduce Senator Tartaglione in just a minute. She's going to have a few words to say. But she is the Democratic chairwoman of the Senate Labor and Industry Committee. She's going to champion my minimum wage proposal in the Senate. And also Patty Kim, Representative Kim, is chair of the House. Well, no, I'm sorry, you're the Democratic Deputy Whip. So I'm still relatively new at politics, so you're going to have to forgive me for getting these things wrong. I also want to acknowledge my Lieutenant Governor, not our Lieutenant Governor, Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman. You'll notice John is wearing a necktie today, which is really great. There you go. Perfect. And I also want to welcome all the legislators and workers behind me who are all champions of this legislation. All of us agree, let me just say a few words, all of us agree that Pennsylvania has to be a place where hard work is rewarded. But today, too many people are working harder, and they still can't afford basics like food and transportation and shelter. Despite working full-time, too many people still need the help from public benefit programs to get by. In Pennsylvania, restaurants, wait and food staff are paid even less than minimum wage. That's the tip minimum wage. And we've accepted that we as consumers need to pick up the tab through tips. Yet many of these folks are still barely getting by. This is bad for families all around Pennsylvania. It's bad for our communities. It's bad for our economy. It's just bad for all of us. Pennsylvania's minimum wage has been stuck at $7.25 an hour for a decade. That's the lowest level allowed by the federal government, the federal minimum wage. The minimum is $7.25. During that time, over the past decade, as you all know, the cost of food, gas, and just about everything else has risen. While workers in Pennsylvania have waited, the minimum wage has increased in 29 other states, including every single one of our neighboring states, with New Jersey being the most recent one, and they have a pathway to $15 an hour. Now think about that for a moment. Imagine a single mom working to keep food on the table to provide for her children. She could make more money working the same minimum wage job in New Jersey, Ohio, West Virginia, Maryland, actually for that matter, Nebraska or Montana. So simply put, Pennsylvanians are working hard but earning less. And I think it's time, I think we all think it's time for Pennsylvanians, for those workers here in Pennsylvania to get a fair wage. So today I'm proud to announce a proposal to increase the minimum wage for all workers to $12 an hour starting July 1st. And that'll put more money in the pockets of nearly 1 million Pennsylvanians. We also have to do more. Under this plan, the wage would then gradually increase after that by 50 cents a year until reaching $15 an hour by 2025. And then it would be tied to the cost of living, to inflation thereafter. When we give people a living wage for their work, it will lift them out of poverty. And as people earn more, they can work their way off public assistance. In other words, this is really a jobs bill. Let me be blunt. If in our economy you need public assistance through federal or state assistance because your full-time job doesn't pay you enough to meet the basic quality of life needs, then we don't have a free market. We have a failing market. We actually have a taxpayer subsidized market. If people earn a fair wage, on the other hand, they're going to need less public assistance, less taxpayer assistance, and that's going to save taxpayers just in the first 6 months $36 million. And the next 2 years, $119 million. Now, these are workers we all know. Some of them are standing behind me. They often have physically demanding jobs, and they provide really important services. For example, child care workers, direct care workers also. These professionals perform some of society's most important jobs. They care for our children. They care for our seniors. They work around the clock providing services to people with disabilities. Think about it. We're talking about our kids. We're talking about our parents. We're talking about our grandparents. This is not an abstraction. These are people we really need to have be taken care of in a very good way. And yet, an estimated 110,000 personal care aides earn only an average of $11.51 an hour. Child care workers, we talk about how important early child care and child education is. We have $10.42 go to those folks. The people caring for our children, our parents, and those with disabilities deserve better. And that's why, again, I'm proposing to reinvest a portion of the savings so that the Department of Human Services can support the wage increases for child care and direct care workers. In other words, we increase this minimum wage. This is going to go to the people who actually care for our children, for our families, for our parents and grandparents. If we can raise the minimum wage to $12, then we'll be able to afford to support the organizations enough to make sure that they have the compensation for their folks that they need to pay. This builds on the $400 million in additional investment we made during my first term to increase wages for workers serving individuals with intellectual disability or autism. Even with these added expenses, then, the Commonwealth will save $36 million next year just by raising the minimum wage. That's what we'll save here in the Commonwealth. We can do that without raising taxes while continuing to move toward a more efficient, more effective state government. In the end, this is not just about those who make $7.25 an hour. This is about all of those women and men who make less than $12 an hour. They're adults. Many of them are parents. Again, often it's a working mom. They work in child care. They work in health care. They do things that make a difference in our society. They also work in offices and in retail stores and in jobs that they're forced to rely on tips. By the way, once again, tips are regarded as a bonus, but they're not. They're a tax on consumers, all of us who go into restaurants. Tips will continue, but we will create one minimum wage for all workers. 7 states have already done this. We're getting rid of the tipped, proposing to get rid of the tipped minimum wage. But let's be clear on that. A tipped wage is not fair to the workers who depend on tips. It's not fair to consumers. It's not fair to all of us who are paying for public benefits because these workers still need public assistance. Tipped workers aren't making enough, and in some cases they have to endure harassment or worse just so they can make a livable wage. We've got to stop this. Many employers also know that paying workers a good living wage makes sense. They know it's not just the right thing to do, it's also a very smart business practice. When workers are not worried about putting food on the table or paying rent, they can be more productive. I ran a business, and I know that we paid our workers a livable, family-sustaining wage. And so one thing I didn't have to worry about was workers in my company always looking around, figuring out where could they go to make a better compensation. We had lower turnover, and it made my company a much more profitable and much better company. That's one of the reasons why last year I signed an executive order that raised the wage for workers under my jurisdiction to $12 an hour. And again, just as in this proposal, we'll raise to $15 an hour by 2025. We've raised the wage for state workers, other states have raised the wage for their residents, all of them, not just state workers. And we know that the people of the Commonwealth want it. Polls show that 7 in 10 Pennsylvanians support raising the minimum wage. I say that, but this is the right thing to do. We need to do the right thing here, not just because it's also politically expedient. Paying a living wage for hard work supports the values of our nation. We are the wealthiest nation on the earth, and no one who works hard in this country, and certainly in this Commonwealth, should have to live in poverty. When 1 million Pennsylvanians finally get a wage increase as a result of this proposal, it will help families, and again, it's going to help our customers and all of our business because they're going to have more money to spend in the businesses that are out there. It's good for the economy. It's good for all of us. So I want to thank Senators Tartaglione and Haywood, Representative Kim for being leaders on this issue, and I want to thank all the others who are around here in attendance for promoting this and helping to push this forward. We have a chance to actually get out of the rut we're in and make minimum wage increase a real thing here in Pennsylvania. And I want to urge everybody here to make your voices heard. This is good for everybody in Pennsylvania, not just somebody out there. All of us will benefit from lower expenses in our state, for better service in our businesses, and for better people being paid more appropriately to care for the people we care about most. So make your voices heard, and together we are going to raise the minimum wage for the people in Pennsylvania. So now it is my pleasure to introduce Senator Tina Tartaglione, the Democratic Chair of the Senate Labor. By the way, now my wife is Italian. You have an E on the end of your name. It's Tartaglione, but she would say Tartaglione. Okay. Senator Tartaglione.
Thank you, Governor. And thank you for hosting this event. and I want to thank you for your unwavering support in raising the minimum wage. And I'd like to thank Representative Kim for being such a big part and a great, strong partner on this issue. And I'd also like to thank Art Hayward from the Senate, who has been working diligently to be able to help us do this. Minimum wage is one of the most important issues facing us as elected officials and as a Commonwealth, because it directly impacts so many of our constituents. Enacting our legislation would give raises to 2.1 million Pennsylvanians, who represent 37% of the total workforce. These workers and their families would earn an additional $9.1 billion, that's with a B, over the next 5 years, money that they will spend in their communities in support of their businesses. This new prosperity would benefit people from all walks of life, all ages, all races, all religions, and both men and women. It would help workers in our major cities, those who live in the suburbs, and also our rural workforce. What's more, raising the minimum wage is long overdue. And I know this because I sponsored Pennsylvania's last minimum wage legislation in 2006. At the time, all the naysayers warned us that we would force Pennsylvania companies out of business and drive away countless jobs. These doomsday predictions never happened, never came to pass. Undaunted, our critics are making the same argument now, that businesses can't afford to pay a fair minimum wage, a living wage, and that we will lose jobs to other states. But once again, history tells us otherwise. Since Pennsylvania last raised its minimum wage, we've seen New York rise to $11.10, Maryland rise to $10.10, Delaware to $9.25, and New Jersey rise to $8.85. And as we speak, New Jersey is putting the finishing touches on a new plan to raise minimum wage to $15. I don't know, Governor Wolf, I ask you, since our neighbors are all raising minimum wage, do you see people flocking to Pennsylvania in search of jobs? I know I haven't. So I am really honored to be here today with Governor Wolf and you, Representative Kim, along with our colleagues, the many labor advocates here, and the majority of Pennsylvanians, in support legislation that will finally raise the minimum wage to help millions of Pennsylvania families realize their share of the American dream. I would now like to introduce Stephanie Williams.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Williams. I'm a home care provider in North Philadelphia. I've been a home care provider for 5 years, and I really enjoy my job. It's very fun and interesting being a home care provider, especially when I work for someone like my mother. I cook, clean, do laundry, take her to appointments, and other things as well, walks, just interact with her. She often thanks me because she appreciates the fact that she's home and not in a nursing home. And I have other clients as well that really appreciate having someone to come into their home instead of being put in a nursing home. They often thank me, and I really appreciate it because I would like to see them at home as well. Raising the minimum wage is very important for someone like me because I only make $10.50 an hour. So it's hard for me to pay my rent, my bills. Sometimes even groceries are hard for me. I have to rely and depend on family and friends to help me out. Thank God they do. So Thank you, Governor Wolf, for supporting us home care workers. Thank you also for working to raise the minimum wage. And thank you for helping and supporting the working class people in Pennsylvania. Now I would like to Anita Caraway.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Anita Caraway. I'm a home child care provider. I've been in business for 15 years. And most importantly, what is important to us is the safety, the education, quality education for our parents and what they look for from us. We do produce, however, it becomes difficult when your employees are seeking other jobs that will pay them more, and you can't blame them. Some parents working 2 jobs, 3 jobs, whatever it takes to make the income or their family work. So giving them a pay rate increase may not give them the freedom to work 1 job, but 2 is better than 3. The other thing is those children come to us looking for trust. They look for family values, and with parents working the way they do, it's really hard for parents to give them that quality care that they need at home. So when they come to the daycares, we as providers really give that to them. And of course, it's always our pleasure to do that. But when those children are trusting us to make things happen, and the next week or next month or so, the teacher that they had is gone, trying to venture out to make more money, it makes that trust just a little less dumb. So we need these pay rate increases for these family members, for the parents, and most of all, for the children, because they are our future. Let me introduce to you Ben Miller, restaurant owner.
Good morning. I'm standing here with my wife, Christina Martinez. Her and I are chefs and owners of the restaurant South Philly Barbacoa. We're also members of the RAISE Coalition, which is from the Restaurant Opportunity Center, which we're here also representing. And we're proud to be standing today with Governor Wolf and Senator Tartaglione and Senator Haywood and Representatives Kim and Rob, supporting the one fair wage for Pennsylvania workers. The subminimum tip wage of $2.83 an hour would result in an economic stimulus of $3.5 billion for Pennsylvania. Currently, the median income for tip restaurant workers in Pennsylvania is $11,563. 73% of tip restaurant workers are women, and 27% of those women are moms. 20% of tip restaurant workers are over 45 years old. In our restaurant, our lowest paid employee is $11 an hour. We would support raising to $15 an hour. And if everyone had to do that, the consumer would also understand that prices may go up, and this is better for our society as a whole. People that are being paid well and can put their happiness and their love into the work that they're doing, and that reflects in the food that we're eating as well. And it will cause less turnover for us. We're a small mom and pop business, and we support the one fair wage. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Patty Kim, the state representative for the 103rd District, which includes the city of Harrisburg. I want to again thank the governor over and over again for making this a high priority. I want to thank my companion, my partner, Senator Christina Tartaglione, and my new co-prime, Representative Chris Robb. After working 6 years trying to raise the minimum wage, I don't know what else to call this but an impasse. We have been at war with words from different studies. One side says it's a job killer. We say it's a job creator. The other side says it won't help the people that we want to help. We respond with almost 2 million people will finally get a pay raise. Instead of a 30-day partial shutdown, this has been going on for 10 long years since the last minimum wage was risen. The ones who suffer or shut out are the people who are still working for $7.25 per hour. This impasse needs to end. In a Bloomberg opinion article out this week, it says that we now have a growing body of evidence that tips the scale in favor of proponents, bolstered by several decades of research on the subject. At this point, the clear conclusion is that modest increases in minimum wages slowly over time don't destroy jobs or growth, end quote. We see this happening in our neighboring states that are benefiting from a higher minimum wage. We need to be next. I came across a paragraph in Doris Kearns Goodwin's book on leadership. It reads, in a celebrated radio address in April 1932, President Franklin Roosevelt called on the country to rebuild its lost prosperity from the bottom up, not the top down, to put their faith once more in the forgotten man at the bottom of the economic pyramid. To me, the forgotten men and women of today are the low-wage workers. We want to shed a spotlight on them to show them who they really are. They are not all teenagers anymore. They are more experienced, more productive, and the vast majority are adults with children. This year, let's finally end the impasse. Let's raise the minimum wage to a living wage and allow it to rise with inflation. That way, we don't have to revisit this issue every decade and allow hardworking men and women to be forgotten in this painful political process. Thank you.